Here's the code for our emoji converter program that we wrote earlier. If you missed that tutorial, make sure to go back and watch it. As I told you before, there is a table of content right below this video in the description. So you can simply click on the emoji converter tutorial to watch it. Now, your exercise is to reorganize this code using a function. So I want you to extract a function in this code. Because this algorithm for converting these smiley faces into emojis is something that we probably want to use in a lot of different applications. We can use it in a chat application, in an email application, and so on. We don't want to write all this code every time. We want to convert these characters into smiley faces. So out of all these lines of code that we have, from line 1 to line 10, the lines 2 to 9 belong to our algorithm. All these lines together implement this feature. So you should put these lines in a separate function. Now, why don't we have the input in that function? Because the input can come in different forms. Currently, we're using the input function to receive the input from the terminal, but in other applications, we might receive the input from a graphical user interface. So the input can come in different forms. We don't want to put that in our function because this line will not be reusable. We want to give our function the actual message as a string. We don't care how we got that message. In one program, we might get it from the terminal. In another program, we might get it from a graphical user interface. So that is the reason this line of code should not be in that function. By the same token, you shouldn't include the last line in that function because what we do with the output is different from one program to another. In this program, we're printing the output. In another program, we might send that output as an email or as a response in a chat application. So as a general rule of thumb, your functions should not worry about receiving input and printing it. These lines of code should not belong to your functions. So go ahead and reorganize this code by extracting a function. All right, on the top, first we need to define our function. So we type def, give our function a name like emoji underline converter. So the name of this function clearly tells me what it does. Each function should be responsible for one and only one task, and that task should be clearly explained in the name of the function, okay? So our emoji converter function should take a parameter, we call that message. That is a string, right? Colon. Now we need to move the lines 5 all the way to the end of our for block into that function. So let's select all these lines. We can cut them from here by pressing Command and X on Mac or Control and X on Windows. Then we paste them here. As you can see, these lines are automatically indented, so they are part of the emoji converter function. If this didn't happen on your computer, make sure to select these lines and use the tab to indent them. All right, so here's our emoji converter function. Beautiful. Now, after that, in the main flow of our program, first we get the input from the user. We store it in this variable message, and then we call emoji converter and pass this message. This function should return a value. That is what we calculate at the end of this function. So right after this for block, we need to add a return statement, return output. Now that our function returns a value, we can get it and store it in a separate variable. Let's call that result. And then we can simply print that here, or we can make this code shorter. We don't really need this variable here. So we can simply call the emoji converter and print the result like this. Now here we have an underline because, as I told you before, we need 2 blank lines after our function definitions. So currently we have only 1 blank line. We need to add another blank line. Good. Let's go ahead and run this program to make sure everything works as before. So I'm going to type a message like good morning with a smiley face. Good. Let's run it one more time. I'm sad. Too bad. Okay, beautiful. So here's the final result. We defined this function called emoji converter. This function takes a parameter called message and finally returns the output.